Spec cards are a classification of Pokemon cards that were introduced in the Boundaries Crossed expansion. An Spec card is a very powerful item or tool card that has a special drawback. There can only be one Spec card in your deck. There are currently 13 different Spec cards. These powerful item cards change the game with their effects. At number 10 on this list, we have Victory Piece from Plasma Storm. This Spec only had an effect when attached to Victini EX. Victory Piece was a tool card that said if this card is attached to Victini EX can use its attack regardless of the amount of energy attached to it. So basically, it can attack for free. And Victini EX had two attacks. Turbo Energize, which allows the player to search the deck for two basic energies and attach them to their Pokemon any way they would like for one fire energy, and Intensifying Burn, which does 50 base damage, but 50 more damage if the defending Pokemon is an EX Pokemon for one fire and two colorless energies. These attacks were not very strong, but during this format, they were. There was one clear S tier deck in the format. Another Spec card on this list allowed this deck to do 200 damage and one hit KO most cards in the format. Genesect and Virizion were grass types weak to fire type attacks, which doubled the damage done to them by fire Pokemon like Victini EX. Because Victory Piece eliminated the energy requirement to attack, and Victini EX could either one-hit KO Virizion or Genesect EX with its Intensifying Burn attack, it became an anti-meta way to fight against the best deck in the format. The trainer card Skyla would search out Victory Piece, and any search card, like Ultra Ball, could dig out Victini EX, providing a chance against the overpowered Genesect and Virizion deck. Decks playing this card never finished higher than 27th in competitions. Coming in at number 9, we have Gold Potion, released in Boundaries Crossed. Gold Potion offers a powerful defensive ability. It simply heals 90 damage from your active Pokemon, a big recovery for when the card released. Timed right, this can let your key fighters continue for an extra round or two. While helpful, Gold Potion ranks lower because of the useful alternatives and the fact that you can't use it on your benched Pokemon could be problematic. This card really only saw niche play before the other Spec cards were released in the Landorus EX deck. Landorus EX had a powerful attack called Land's Judgment, which required you to discard all fighting energy attached to the Pokemon to do an additional 70 damage. Since you would have to discard the energy attached to Landorus, you would have been better off using Max Potion, which reads, heal all damage from one of your Pokemon, then discard all energy attached to that Pokemon. Since you already had no energy, Max Potion was just a more useful alternative. A Gold Potion-led deck actually finished 7th at a regional tournament in Daytona Beach, Florida. At number 8, we have Rock Guard that released in Plasma Freeze. Rock Guard reads, if the Pokemon this card is attached to is your active Pokemon and is damaged by an opponent's attack, even if the Pokemon is knocked out, put 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. Rock Guard is a tool card, but it does work on any Pokemon. The downside was Rock Guard's effect could be avoided by removing it from the active spot. The most prominent deck to use this card was Seismitoad EX. Seismitoad was infamous in the Pokemon trading card game for its attack, Quaking Punch. Quaking Punch put your opponent under item lock, making it difficult for them to set up and even play the game. For a single double colorless energy, this was an easy strategy to pull off and made item-heavy decks unplayable. Quaking Punch only did 30 damage. To increase damage output, Seismitoad EX decks used Verbank City Gym and Hypnotoxic Laser. Verbank City Gym has the effect that poison Pokemon take 30 damage in between turns instead of the usual 10. Hypnotoxic Laser was an item card that poisoned a defending Pokemon, and if the coin flipped heads, it would also put that Pokemon to sleep. Poison damage would add in between each player's turn, while sleep was a condition that let the defending Pokemon unable to attack or retreat. This variation of Seismitoad EX got second place in the 2015 World Championships. Rock Guard began seeing play in Seismitoad EX because of the mirror match. So many people were playing this deck that they had to find an advantage. When faced with another Seismitoad deck, getting that Rock Guard down meant the defending player would be restricted to doing 30 damage a turn, but taking an additional 60 damage from Rock Guard. With a Spec being an item card, it could not be used after Quaking Punch was set up. This card was teched for by playing Xerosic, which reads, choose a Pokemon tool or special energy card attached to a Pokemon in play and discard it. Rock Guard also finished in second place at the French Nationals in 2015. Number 7 on this list, we have Master Ball. The effect of this A-Spec was very simple. Search your deck for a Pokemon card and put it into your hand. While the effect was simple, the effect was powerful to have a search card with absolutely zero drawbacks. Other ball search cards have drawbacks such as Team Plasma Ball, which reads, search your deck for a Team Plasma Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Other ball search cards required you to discard other cards from your hand, such as Ultra Ball. In the Sword and Shield format, Quick Ball had two drawbacks, requiring you to discard one card and limited you to basic Pokemon, and it was a staple 4 of in most decks. Master Ball bolstered any setup with an additional way to search out their main attacker or even their main support Pokemon with ease. Why didn't Master Ball see much use, and why is it so low on this list? Ultra Ball is the next best thing and still leaves your A-Spec slot open for something more powerful. The drawback of discard 2 cards from your hand was very insignificant for this added consistency. Ultra Ball has the same effect as Master Ball, which is why most decks played the max of 4 copies. If Master Ball had been released earlier, it may have seen more play. At number 6, we have G-Booster. G-Booster, similar to Victory Piece, was a tool card that only worked on a specific Pokemon, Genesect EX. This attack was the same cost as Genesect's Megalo Cannon, but did 200 damage and was not affected by any effects on the defending Pokemon. In a format where every deck was trying to two-shot each other, this 200 damage attack could easily one-hit KO everything else. This card was one of the many reasons why Virizion and Genesect was the best deck in the era, winning every major tournament in 2014. With cards like Virizion EX and its Emerald Slash that could power up your Genesect EX, and Colress Machine, which grabbed a plasma energy from the deck and attached it to the Genesect EX, you could chain multiple G-Booster attacks if your opponent could not respond to the attacking Genesect, or remove the G-Booster tool with cards like Tool Scrapper. G-Booster was paired up with Skyla, the supporter to grab any item card, so finding G-Booster on the turn that it was needed was not difficult. Shadow Triad could grab a plasma card from the discard pile and put it into your hand to reuse G-Booster throughout the game. G-Booster helped Genesect and Virizion dominate this era, earning its spot on the list. At number 5 on this list, we have Scramble Switch, released in Plasma Storm. This card allowed the player to switch one of their bench Pokemon with one of their active Pokemon and moved all of the energy between the old active Pokemon and the new active Pokemon. Scramble Switch's success came in the expanded format that ran alongside Pokemon Standard format, but allowed the use of cards from the Black and White expansion to whichever present-day set was legal, with the exception of a few banned cards. Primal Groudon EX was the deck that most often utilized Scramble Switch because of how Primal Groudon EX functioned. Groudon had the Ancient Trait Barrier, which prevented any trainer card from affecting it, like Guzma and Crushing Hammer. Groudon required 3 fighting energy and 1 colorless energy for its attack Gaia Volcano, which did 100 damage, and another 100 damage if you discarded a stadium in play. This attack damage could be boosted with Strong Energy. Strong Energy added 20 damage for each copy attached. With a max hit of 280 damage, Groudon was a powerhouse. Groudon also played a few copies of Focus Sash that said if this Pokemon were to be knocked out from full HP, then put the remaining HP at 10 and discard this tool, potentially saving all of your strong energy. It was difficult to get your special energy back, so once the first Groudon was damaged and rendered unable to fight, you would play Scramble Switch to bring up the second Primal Groudon, move all of the energy onto it, and attach a new Focus Sash. This would negate all of the work your opponent just put into damaging your Groudon. Scramble Switch helped Buzzwole and Lycanroc GX win the expanded regional tournament in Roanoke, Virginia during the Black and White through Forbidden Light era in the 2018 season, many years after its original release. Scramble Switch saw very little play during its time in the standard format. Coming in at number 4, we have Up Cyclone. Released in Plasma Blast, this card allows the player to pick up 1 Pokemon and all cards attached to it and return them to the player's hand. This effect was very powerful. It could pick up damaged Pokemon before being knocked out. It could be used to reuse Pokemon like Shaman EX, which drew cards until you had 6 in your hand, or just remove low HP multiple prize liabilities from your bench. Similar to Master Ball, Pokemon had an existing card with the same effect as Up Cyclone. Super Scoop Up had the same effect, with the downside being you had to flip a coin and get heads. You could play 4 copies of Super Scoop Up versus 1 copy of Scoop Up Cyclone. In the expanded format, we saw Scoop Up Cyclone paired with Lucario GX from Forbidden Light, which did 30 base damage and 90 more if it evolved this turn for a single fighting energy with its attack Aura Sphere. The single energy requirement allowed players to chain multiple Lucario GXs in back-to-back turns by picking up the cards with Super Soup Up, Scoop Up Cyclone, and trainer cards such as Acerola. This deck was the choice to combat the powerhouse Zoroark GX and Drampa GX during the 2018 season by hitting them for weakness. During the Sword and Shield era, Scoop Up Net had a similar effect that saw significant play. Scoop Up Net reads put 1 Pokemon that is not a Pokemon V or Pokemon GX into your hand, and discard all attached cards. 2 restrictions that made this significantly weaker, but it is still an extremely powerful card, especially in the expanded format where you can use it on cards such as Shaman EX repeatedly. Scoop Up Net and Super Scoop Up hold this card back from the top 3 cards in our list because they have similar effects. Coming in at number 3, we have Life Dew from Plasma Freeze. This was another tool card, but this card's effect was that Pokemon that it was attached to would give up 1 less prize card when knocked out. In the game of Pokemon, taking prize cards is how you win. Having a card that makes your opponent take 1 less prize card makes it easier for you to win the prize card race. Life Dew saw significant play in 2013 with a deck that revolved around Plasma Pokemon. Kyurem would do 30 damage to an active bench Pokemon with its Frost Spear attack for a water and colorless energy, and had a second attack Blizzard Burn that did 120 damage for 2 water and a colorless energy, with the downside being that this Pokemon could not attack. Deoxys EX would add 10 additional damage to each of your Plasma Pokemon's attack with its ability Power Connect. This effect would stack for each Deoxys EX on the field, allowing for 40 additional damage from this effect. Deck played Thundurus and Absol for the off turns where Kyurem could not attack, 160 damage on a single prize attacker in a format where the 2 prize Pokemon had 180 HP, at most was extremely powerful. Paired with Hypnotoxic Laser and Verbank City Gym, made it broken. This powerful deck finished 2nd place in the 2013 World Championships. If you could not retreat your Kyurem, the Life Dew would prevent your opponent from taking a prize card that turn if they managed to knock it out. In the expanded format, we saw Life Dew paired with control decks such as Sableye, whose attack Junk Hunt put back 2 item cards from the discard pile into the player's hand for a single dark energy. This meant that Life Dew could be used infinitely in a game. This card was incredibly powerful in the right situations. At number 2 on this list, we have Dowsing Machine. Dowsing Machine says that the player discards 2 cards in their hand to bring back any trainer card from the discard pile. This specified trainer cards, meaning that it included supporters and stadiums. This card has the same text as the card printed in the Pokemon base set Item Finder, and that card was played at max copies during its lifetime. The format right before Dowsing Machine had a similar card in Junk Arm, with the same effect that saw widespread play. Dowsing Machine was the only A-Spec card to really contest our number 1 card on this list because of the resource management and consistency it provided. Getting access to additional copies of an important resource in matchups can be the game deciding factor. Early game discards would be less damaging, and late game, this Dowsing Machine could become an extra copy of any item, tool, or supporter to close out the game. Dowsing Machine was played in Garbotoxin, Zoroark GX, and Night March decks to 7 regional tournament wins. When the item card VS Seeker released, which reads put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand, it gave similar search with no downside, opening your A-Spec slot for the number 1 card on our list. And finally, taking the number 1 spot on this list, Computer Search. Computer Search allowed you to discard any 2 cards from your hand in order to search out any card from your deck. This was another exact copy of a card from the original base set called Computer Search. Computer Search was played in almost every single deck because of how often it would help the player set up their early game. It found its way immediately into decks after its release and stayed there even in the expanded format. The early game consistency that it offered was better than the late game insurance of Dowsing Machine. Finding a double colorless energy that Seismitoad EX would need to attack, or finding an early game supporter card just to play the game. Effects like Computer Search have been printed later in the Pokemon TCG, but they all have major restrictions. The trainer card twins could only be used if you were behind in prize cards. Teammates could only be played if your opponent knocked out a Pokemon last turn, but you were able to grab 2 cards. Red's challenge was an identical reprint of Computer Search, but it was much worse because you had to use your 1 supporter for turn instead of an item card. Most decks would only play 1 or 2 Red's challenge for this reason. Raihan is a supporter that could only be used if your Pokemon was knocked out last turn, and there had to be a basic energy card to attach from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. Cramomatic is the only item card with this effect, but has 2 downsides, being you have to flip a coin and get heads, and you have to discard an item card, but it still saw significant play. Forest Sealstone and Arceus V-Star both have the effect, but use up your powerful V-Star ability for the game. This effect is so strong that it could never see play without restrictions. Computer Search dominated its time in the format to more than 25 major tournament wins. Did I miss an underrated A-Spec card in this list? Let me know down in the comments.